Hi, I've been showing up to my inner world and my immediate outer world a lot more as of late, and I'm going to keep doing that. But one thing that keeps pressing to be spoken about is, even the fact that I haven't produced content in, months, it is a boundary. It is an internal boundary. It is an awareness of where my own thresholds are and what kind of sense of space I have to be in myself to stay myself, to not lose myself, given the external circumstances. So recently this has been coming up, and I'm not sure if you would look at me and think like I'm an asshole, maybe, right? But I met with somebody the other day who was the old guidance counselor at the school that I founded. And I worked there for the first 3 years that we opened, but she didn't work there yet. So she worked there after me. And when we were out one day, we were at a party. It was like a little mushroom tea party, like a Smurf party it was. And she wanted to talk to me about the school. And I was like, no, I don't want to talk about it. I wasn't there to be talking about what I do or did outside of that moment. So I know a lot of people lead with the question like, oh, what do you do for a living? What do you do for fun? And that's awesome, but not for me usually, because I like to be where people are in the moment. I like to learn where people as they are, where they are. I learn a lot more about a person by being present with them than by the story that they tell me about their past. And I really appreciate when people just kind of lead with in a weird way. I think a lot of us are like, oh my God, it's so shallow to just talk about the weather. But the weather is something that is present in the moment to talk about, that is a collective reality that we can all kind of agree on or talk about, that's not polarizing, right? It's like the weather is the weather. We can all see it. We can talk about it. We can be present to each other through it. And it's a present thing to talk about, right? But when people lead with oh, what do you do for a living? And let's talk about work. My circuits always start going, okay, exit, right? And I'm not trying to be an asshole. There's a time and a place for that. But sometimes for me, and maybe with some people, because some people I would engage possibly differently with, but when people approach me, and so this woman tells me the first time she met me was at this party, and I didn't know this or remember this. And then the second time she met me, I was volunteering, chaperoning on a field trip, and she saw me as this very nurturing and motherly person. But at the time, she didn't connect that I was the same person. So she's telling me this as kind of the first time you talked to me, you kind of put me here and didn't really want to talk about what I was trying to delve into with you. And that reminded me of a client that I had one time years ago when I had my practice in town. And it's just so funny because I didn't know her as a client. I met her at a party, and I was a professor at the time, but I was also in private practice. And she was also a professor, and she was going into her week pretty anxious, and she wanted my kind of support, my camaraderie over the stress of it. And I am a different kind of professor. I'm I'm the person who's I'll go sit and wait, listen to what people say, and then show up at the front of the room and be like, hey guys, I'm your professor, right? I am a lot more communal and off the cuff than she thought that she was able to be. So she wanted my help, and I was I'm happy to help you, but not right now. Right now I'm here to have a good time. That can be perceived as very rude, apparently, because I didn't know this, but we did a workshop together, And she brought it up in front of all of these people. She brought up that like, oh, when I met you, you basically said that you didn't want to talk about what I wanted to talk about. And I thought it was rude. And I was just sitting there from my chair looking at this situation and thinking to myself, like, but you hired me anyway. Fascinating. So this guidance counselor, she also has hired me in the past. She's come to a bunch of my workshops. So it's not, or like she like follows my work, but she's also like been in my workshops. But it's not, I think that people think if I set a boundary that I'm rejecting other people. But the boundary is the acceptance of the self and its own threshold. And I just kind of see patterns. I don't even need to like analyze them. It's just like, that's what I see when I look at a person. So it's not that like, oh, I fear talking about what I'm doing because they're going to like think I'm trying to get in their head or something. It's like, no, I'm not trying to get in your head. I'm actually trying to stay in mine while I'm out having a good time and trying to be present to my life, not present to like what's going on in your life that you need my help with, when that's kind of like what I do for a living, you know? So I didn't even realize that I was baller enough to be that person back then, because there's other things that I wouldn't be that way about. Like if they wanted to talk to me about like, oh my God, their heart was breaking or something, I probably would have been codependent enough to like jump in. But when they wanted to talk to me about work, the way that like we would talk about the weather, right? But the weather's not, we would be talking about like a storm that happened a couple days ago or that rainbow that happened a couple days ago. I personally don't need to do that with people. So it's really fascinating for me that when you think about who of those people hired me, well, both of them. And both of them had a story that in the beginning, my boundary both challenged and inspired them. And if I want to demonstrate sovereignty and agency and just that we can live not at the mercy of other people's expectations of us, and that we can be who we are in the presence of other people and yada yada, I have to model that it is possible. And actually in those situations, I didn't even feel like an asshole. I actually, in a weird way, probably thought, if you're asking me this when it's clear that I'm like trying to just be chill here, you might be an asshole, right? So, and I know that different strokes for different folks. Like people love to talk about this stuff. It gives them something to talk about. But I'm a kind of person who would rather laugh and like have a good time and, you know, just talk about things that are not necessarily related to the self or the story of the self, but that the self can experience in the moment, you know? That's what I prefer in the relational realm anyway. These days, I used to only prefer sitting in the corner with somebody who's going to tell me all their trauma and let me help them, right? Like I was primed actually to not be the person who would say, you know, we can talk about this another time, or I can help you another time, but right now I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be here to chill and party. That's it's funny, just like I didn't realize that that's how people saw me, and that's how I actually do operate. And a lot of people would think if you operate that way, people won't hire you. And like, even I'm an introvert in a weird way. Like people think that I go out and like network and I market, and I don't do any of that, right? Like when I go out, I'm not going out to network. I'm going out to like not work and to enjoy. And this has always been true. This is not like, oh, I got to this place where I do this thing for a living and that's like, now I have it separate. That's not true. This has always been true. The one chick, I was working at a school and I did it. The other chick, I was working as a professor and I did it. So I just find it fascinating that we often think that we will be not liked because of a boundary. And in that case, both of those people aspired to get comfortable with somebody else having a boundary, and both of them came to me to aspire to be comfortable with being somebody who has a boundary, even though they didn't like that I originally said, you know, kind of, I wouldn't even call it a boundary. It was just so like, and that's the fun thing when you are somebody and you know who you are, Your boundaries are primal. They're just primal. They're not like, oh, I'm setting a boundary and I have to put a stake in the sand here. That's not how it feels at all. It doesn't even feel like a boundary. It just feels like, no, I'm just going to protect my threshold and my bubble and my intention. And this is a way to do it. It doesn't feel like I'm drawing a line in the sand and there's an us against them and you have to stay out there and I'm in here. That's not how a true boundary feels. And that was what was so ironic being reflected, that those were my boundaries even back then, because in a lot of other areas I very much struggled to assert them, or I don't even want to say assert, because again, I don't think boundaries are something that you assert, you allow them, right? I allowed myself from the inside out say, that's a stretch of a conversation that I don't want to go to right now. I don't even have to give a reason for it. Just like, that's not what I'm here to do, right? So, but I wasn't rude. I said, like, I'm happy to help you in another time space. Just not right now, not here. Because I could tell the energy was kind of like wanting to suck me into a bubble that I like was there to be out of, if that makes sense. So just something to chew on. There's no moral of the story here other than both of those people had something to say about it, and both of those people hired me because what they had to say about it in the end kind of intrigued them and they wanted it for themselves. And I'm still in relationship with both of them. So it's very interesting that you think you're going to push people away by staying in yourself. When the truth is, you kind of bring people closer when you can model for them that you can stay in yourself and they can stay in themselves next to you. There doesn't have to be this like leaning in, right? So fascinating stuff. Both of those people who had something to say about it hired me. I never had anybody else, made me feel safe enough to tell me that I did something like that. But yeah, just something to chew on. Chew on that. How does that land in your body? All right. I hope you guys are good. Hopefully I'll be back soon enough.